If you're not following Isabel Sterne on LinkedIn, you should be. And I think after hearing her on this episode, you will be. She's a writer, designer, and brand strategist who helps unconventional business owners and individuals build aligned brands. And she's crushing it on LinkedIn. I've been extremely impressed with the humor of her post and the engagement she gets. So listen to this episode and learn how you can do better on LinkedIn. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Career. Well, welcome to the show, Isabel. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
It's fantastic. Known each other for a little while on the socials, mostly LinkedIn, but maybe you could tell the listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Isabel Sterne. I work with solopreneurs and founders on building their reputation on LinkedIn and beyond through strategy, writing, and design.
That's cool. Very cool. People need help with that. We all need help with it. I mean, I've been independent for, over 14 years now. And I feel like I'm constantly kind of tuning my message. And so it's nice to see someone with your skills helping people out. But before you launched your business, you used to be a content marketing manager and a strategist. You have a degree in communication from Cornell, very, very prestigious school. How did you decide to go independent?
So I'd been working in marketing for about 15 years and had been through 3 layoffs. So it seemed that anytime a company was making cuts, marketing tended to be the first to go. So I was just burnt out from that cycle. And I realized I was making all this content for all these companies, but I was not making it for myself. And so I started getting really active on LinkedIn after my layoff and started to see that, wow, people were making businesses like through LinkedIn. So that's really what got me going.
Oh, that's cool. I think that happens to quite a few of us. I mean, that was a bit of my origin story with my first business way back when. I had joined a startup. Things were great. Been there about a year. We got acquired. Parent company was a little weird. I think we got about 3 months into it, and they welcomed us to an offsite at a hotel. And we're like, uh-oh. There was only about 50 of us. And so they basically took our intellectual property and laid off the entire team.
Lovely.
Right?
Yeah.
And we were scrappy. Like the CEO took us out in the parking lot and we had a bunch of beers. And he's like, okay, let's just start up another one and we'll do it again. And I think much like you, I was kind of burned out with layoffs. And oddly enough, I wanted more stability by running my own business. Whereas people think of stability as having a job. And it's like, I don't know how that's stability, especially now with all these layoffs. Yeah. So I applaud you for taking that action. I think some of us do that after we have this weird experience of layoff after layoff, and especially in the last 4 years, it's been layoff after layoff. Tough job market. And it's like, well, I have the skills to do what I've been doing for somebody else. I can use them for myself, which is fantastic. So I'm curious, looking back, and I often wonder this too. It's like, did I have to go through this to get to where I am? Or if I went back and I talked to my younger self, is there something I would have said that would have changed my path? And is there anything you wish you could have told your younger self, kind of knowing what you know now and going through what you've been through?
I think I would have told myself to put myself out there more, like earlier, especially now with the internet. There's so many opportunities to really develop your network and to do really big things. You don't have to have tons of experience anymore. You can start demonstrating your expertise and your value and your experience online. And I think even if you're 20, you have a unique perspective on something and can probably make your own business out of that. So yeah, I would tell myself to put myself out there more.
Yeah. I think that was the big thing I tell people is I wish I had started writing earlier because I love it. I love writing. And I wish I'd built my email list earlier. And I see this happening, and I know you're on Threads too, and a few other places. And there's just weird stuff going on with moderation and AI moderation, taking people's accounts down for using the word cracker. And I'll go ahead and use the word cracker because nobody's moderating me, which is like, what? What is going on with social media? And a certain really unpleasant gentleman taking over Twitter. And everybody knows how I feel about him. So, I mean, I think that's the big thing I learned from this too, is like, get my voice out there. I like writing. That's why I have a Substack. And so I have the newsletter, and I've been writing some books and short stories and getting stuff ready to be published. But I wish I had invested in my email list sooner, because social media is so unpredictable and the algorithm is so unfriendly. But I feel like you've done a really good job managing and I kind of brought this up in our earlier conversation, but I feel like you've conquered LinkedIn, and I know nobody feels like they've conquered anything.
No.
But I don't know how long you were doing this, or if you just came into my circle of awareness, but it seemed like you'd come out of nowhere and then you just exploded. Like, you have this ability, I think, to be funny and kind of counterintuitive to the LinkedIn culture, which is necessary. And I think you talk a lot about the concept of cringe and being willing to be cringy. So I think that kind of ties in this conversation of being willing to put yourself out there. And what have you learned from that journey? And what do you tell people? Because you coach a lot of people to put themselves out there.
Yeah, it's a muscle, which I think a lot of people don't get. And I mean, that was like me for the longest time. I was like, okay, I'll start putting myself out there more when I feel confident, when I feel ready, when I feel whatever. And, that day never came. So I just started. The first post I ever wrote, I think it probably took me like an hour or more. And then when I posted it, I was so nervous. It felt very cringy because I didn't really know what I was doing. And, also the other element with LinkedIn is all your coworkers are watching, all your entire professional network. So, if you say one wrong thing, not only could it be embarrassing, but, your job, employment. So there's all sorts of extra pressure that comes with LinkedIn. But what I realized is, the more I did it, the more comfortable it became, until now I don't even think, I just can really write them in, a few minutes and post it. And I started to know people, so it started to get more comfortable. So I would just tell people to just dive in and don't expect it to feel natural or comfortable at first. Like, you'll get there, but you have to practice.
Right. Yeah. I remember when I first got started writing, I would think I started on Medium. And I gave myself a challenge. I said, I'm going to write and publish a story on Medium every day. I think I did it for 60 days or something like that. And the first one was like agonizing and painful. And I was like, oh, it's not perfect. I got to make it perfect. But then I got into the habit. I was like, I got to get a story out today. I don't have time to agonize over this. It has to be every single day. And then back then, and they finally added it back to the app, you could write and edit on the app in your phone. So you couldn't, I don't know, it made me be fast and kind of casual about it versus being on a laptop and editing and all the stuff you can do. And there was no AI and no Grammarly and stuff like that. So I just blasted stuff out. And the funny thing I found, like you said, it's a muscle. It got easier. The more I wrote, the easier it was to write. And the more I thought about writing, the more ideas I came up with. And I have a huge list of 500 different ideas for stories that I keep in my Ulysses app. And so it just got easier and easier. And the funny thing, and maybe you've noticed this, the stuff I agonize over the most, and I feel like is the most polished and researched and has links to references and all that stuff, it does okay. Maybe it doesn't do that great. The stuff I just blast out in a couple of minutes, it's like it just took off like crazy. I've had the most ridiculous stuff on Threads. I can't remember what it was I posted that got 3 million views and it just went viral. It went crazy. I was like, this was stupid.
You're big on Threads.
Yeah. I wish I was big anywhere. But Threads is also not very business friendly. So it's very casual. I get some business from it, but not as much as I would like. But it was something stupid that I wrote, and it got 3 million views. And I'm like, what? Have you seen a pattern in the stuff that you write that hits versus doesn't hit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to figure out what your goals are for LinkedIn. So like you can get a lot of likes and engagement, and it's not necessarily going to translate to leads for you. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
There's kind of you have to know what you're looking for. But yeah, I definitely see in terms of like engagement, the more casual, humorous, personal stories. You kind of have to think about it. Like you don't go to a networking event and just self-promote and know that people can engage with that. People engage with like questions, with humor. So you almost have to think about it as if you were in a real life networking situation, and like what are the things you would say that would get people to start talking in those situations. But yeah, I think the casual tone does well because it stands out. Like LinkedIn is very formal a lot of times.
My gosh. Yeah. Interesting. Because I think there's what you call cringe, which I think is just being authentic and human and funny, and kind of those observations in life that everybody can connect with. Like, yeah, I feel like that too, right? It's those moments of, I thought I was the only one that felt like that. And that's the stuff that's done best for me, is where somebody privately messages me and says, oh, I felt like I was the only one. I feel so alone. I didn't know anyone else felt that way. And so it really connected with them. I think I don't even know if you want to call it cringe, because that kind of pollutes the word that you've been using. But there are the people then that say, I went to my grandfather's funeral this weekend, and this is what I learned about sales. And I'm like, that's cringy. It's kind of creepy. Maybe creepy is a better word. I don't know. It's like, I don't think that works, which is fake authenticity that they then try to weave into some kind of message about sales and SaaS. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And I think it just comes across as disingenuous, and so I think what people mostly are reacting to is, are you being genuine? And people can tell. They can tell very easily. So yeah, be aware of that.
Speaking of being genuine, oh my goodness. Of course, I've lately had to bring up AI in almost every conversation. And I have very mixed feelings about it. Very mixed feelings about AI. I definitely notice there's people using AI for their post on LinkedIn, and you can kind of tell. And the AI comments that re-summarize your post, they kind of rephrase it. I'm like, that's not you. You never talk like that. So it's clear they're using AI comments. What is your take on AI? Because your stuff definitely doesn't read AI. And I'm sure you may have, and I have, clients who are like, can I use AI to rewrite my resume? Can I use AI to write my cover letter? Can I use it for this? Can I use it for that? What do you feel like is the role of AI in this world that we're in, where we have to write content and market?
It's a big question. Yeah, I'm not anti-AI, even though I have some posts that are a little skeptical of certain aspects of it. I think it is a tool that can be helpful for, content creation in various ways. I think you could even, do a voice note and translate that into posts through AI. And there's all sorts of things you can do. I think it's great for people, if English isn't your first language, if you struggle to write.
Good point.
So there's definitely ways to use it. I personally don't for my posts, because I think through writing. And so I see the value in the process of writing. And I definitely would not suggest it to anyone for comments, because A, people know right away and may block you. And then B, the way you connect with people is a lot of times through the comments. So I would not outsource that for those reasons.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think there's times it's great for research or summarizing stuff or helping you structure an outline, but when it comes to the heavy lifting, and someone talked about this recently, not even just in the context of writing, but their craft as an actor and as an artist, an illustrator, whatever it might be, that there is value, kind of like what you said earlier, in exercising that muscle, that it helps you think. It helps you strengthen your cognitive skills. And I think Mark Manson talks about this, and I know Tim Ferriss talks about this. Ryan Holiday talks about this, that they journal. I journal every morning, and it helps me just get the chaos out of my head and onto the paper, and then I can do something with it. And I think you'd be missing a lot of that if you're using AI. And so you're never learning how to think or how to express yourself. And yeah, it has its place, but I think there's a lot of stuff that it really doesn't do well. And I think it is that human connection. I think there's an unfortunate thing that's happened with social media, which, and you've probably seen this as a marketer, people want to go mass. And so they want to be able to create lots and lots of content and be in lots of places. And Josh Spector talks about this. He was my newsletter coach. It's like, it doesn't matter if you get 1 million likes if you don't get a single sale. Mm-hmm. So he said, do you want money or do you want likes and adoration? What is it you want? Mm-hmm. Because you can be, he said he knows people, and I do too, that they have tons of engagement, lots of views and comments and likes and all that kind of stuff, but then it never translates to anything for their business. They're very engaging and fun. You see stuff like that with Instagram Reels, but it's not translating to revenue for the business. And so I think that was his point, is that wouldn't you rather have fewer places and fewer comments and posts that are high quality and it's human, that lead to sales, versus, I wrote 1,000 things this week and not a single thing happened from that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a good balance that you can find, because like on one hand, people do like to see that you have a high follower count and a high engagement, and that kind of gives you some authority, even like whether that's valid or not for certain people. Right. But so I think, it's nice to have a mix of posts that get engagement, and then of course like be mixing in the more educational or promotional posts that are just letting people know what you offer and what they can, how they can work with you. So it's a balance.
Right. Yeah. And I remember hearing this with Caitlin Bargoin, who she's very successful on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll keep calling it Twitter. She said that she doesn't really preload her content or schedule or do anything. She doesn't use tools for it. She's very good at this. But it's really kind of what pops into her head that day. That's what she writes. And it clearly works for her. And there's other people that are very rigid. They're like, I've got 90 days of content scheduled and I've written everything and it follows this pattern. And I do these types of posts. And she's like, I write what I feel like writing that day. Where do you fall on that spectrum of super structured and planned versus in the moment?
I'm very in the moment with everything. But I realize that is not feasible for everyone, and not everyone works that way. I also have clients who are extremely structured, and it's all scheduled ahead of time and all posts at the same time. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think at the very beginning, when you're posting to somewhere like LinkedIn, for instance, it's helpful to post at the same time every day so people know to look out for you. But kind of once you start to develop your brand, I think you have more flexibility with posting whenever you want, because people will show up. It's just kind of depends on how you work. I mean, the one advantage of posting at different times is that you reach people in different countries. Mm-hmm. So if you are trying to reach like a global audience, that might be a strategy. And I think it also can come across as a little more authentic in a way, because it's more natural. You're posting at different times. It doesn't have this kind of like super planned approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I know some folks that clearly are scheduling, because it's like it hits at 9 a.m. sharp every day, and then 2 p.m. every day. It's like clearly scheduled. And maybe if it works for them, great. It's like I used to. I used to do that, and I used to use some tools like Buffer and a few other things. Media, or you name it. There's a bunch of tools for this kind of stuff. I kind of saw that, and I read that when looking at the algorithm and trying to figure out what it wants. They don't like that. The algorithm doesn't like automated tools, and it doesn't like stuff that does that. And I don't know how much that's still true, but I definitely noticed if I wrote on the fly and just kind of posted what I felt like posting, that got better engagement than anything I scheduled. Anything I scheduled just seemed to kind of fall flat and didn't actually resonate or get any engagement. Are you doing things? And I know, so I've talked with folks about this, and I had a marketing course I took with this, that there's a balance on LinkedIn where they really want you to engage with other people's content too. So they want you to come in, like, comment, reshare, do a bunch of that activity for like 20 to 30 minutes. and then post something. And then whatever you post will get a bigger lift and be shown to more of your audience than if you just come in and blast stuff. And especially if you blast stuff with a link in it. Do you do a mix of that? I've seen you commenting on stuff, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the classic advice with that is, for an hour before you post, start commenting.
Okay.
More so people know you're active, and maybe it like primes the algorithm in a certain way, but mostly it lets people know that you're online, and there's that whole reciprocity thing. So if you comment on their post, they'll probably comment on yours. So yeah, that can definitely be helpful, especially at the beginning. I wouldn't advise. I'd advise against the pod behavior.
I've seen that. Yeah.
That's a strategy. People will all agree to like each other's stuff, but I think LinkedIn sometimes frowns upon that and kicks people off. So
I think they pick up on it. Yeah. They pick up on that, and I've seen that engagement circles and stuff like on Instagram. They'll pick up on that. They're like, okay, it's an engagement circle. This is purely for engagement. I think Threads does too. They'll take something down. They're like, oh, it's engagement bait. So we're not going to actually show that to anyone. We might even take it down. So it's, a lot of the tricks that used to work don't work as the algorithm's getting smarter. That's definitely true. So I want to talk a little bit about how you help people. So I know one of the things that you do is work with people to kind of do a bit of a LinkedIn makeover. And I'm sure I do nothing like you do, but I will do a LinkedIn kind of pass and say, okay, your profile photo, no, that's not going to work. Your header, it's like, why are you using the standard header? You haven't put up anything personal or custom, and your kind of call to action of who you are makes no sense. It's like, does anybody know what you do? What have you seen, and how do you work with people when you're doing a bit of a makeover on LinkedIn profiles?
Yeah, so I offer a few services. The makeover is one of them. And basically what I do is I'll have a 15-minute call with people, get a sense of what their main message is, how they want to position themselves, colors, symbols, that sort of thing, and then send them several versions for them to choose from. And then I will apply that same design to things like post templates, featured images, just so it has like an overall branded, consistent look. And I also work with people on like branding their newsletters or landing pages.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then also strategy support. And I do ghostwriting and content strategy on LinkedIn. So
you do
kind of doing a bunch of things.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. Okay. What do you tell people? So I've seen the pre and post, kind of the before and after, and it's amazing, right? It's like taking somebody's drab LinkedIn stuff and kind of giving it new life and making it really stand out and be about what they're about. Do you also talk with them about what they should be doing to kind of work on engagement on LinkedIn and basically trying to do more of what you do, like writing, commenting, doing things like that?
Yeah, I offer one-on-one strategy sessions. So those are tailored to whatever issue the person's working on. So a lot of times people are simply looking for clarity around how to position themselves and like what to write in their headline, or they're looking for guidance on how to plan their content, like what types of posts that they should be creating.
Okay.
So I can work with people more on the like strategy and content planning. And also sometimes I work with people on the posts themselves. So they might write a draft and then I'll offer feedback about ways just to make it stand out more.
That's cool. Yeah, that's great. No, it's fantastic. A lot of people need help with it.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and this person was great at what they do. They want to use LinkedIn as a channel for marketing. And the coach was like, okay, this is good. It's not clear what you do. So let's change your tagline here. Your kind of your summary, your header that explains who you are. And he said, you haven't posted in 6 months. So it's like, and I see this all the time with people where it's like, you can't just come out of nowhere because you got laid off and say, okay, now I'm going to use LinkedIn to get a job. And you haven't posted in years. You haven't done anything, and they don't want to post. And I think, and I'm sure you probably go through this too, I think one of the hardest things to get people to understand is that this is, I call it a flywheel. And like a flywheel, if people are familiar with what a flywheel is, it's heavy and it takes a lot of work to get it going. But once it's up and running, it doesn't take a lot more energy to keep the momentum going. But if you ever let it spin down, which people do, I got a job. I'm going to stop posting. I'm going to stop updating my LinkedIn. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do that. Come on. No jobs are forever anymore. It's like you're going to get laid off again in 4 years. So you're going to be back in the same boat. How do you encourage people to get into this habit of just kind of spinning the flywheel a little bit every week or at least once a month? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges is people get very scared when they're in a job. I know, like bosses are looking at LinkedIn.
Trying to be authentic, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that makes a lot of people nervous, understandably. So, and, for some reason, for some people, there's valid reason. Some people could get in trouble at work for posting on LinkedIn. And some companies might view that as you're actively looking for a job, so
right.
You have to be careful. And I would advise people, if they're comfortable, to ask like their manager, what their feeling is about them being active on LinkedIn, or just telling the manager, use it for educational purposes or something like that. But yeah, I would suggest people at least post a couple times a week.
Yeah.
And, I work a lot with solopreneurs, and I tell people you should really be posting minimum 3 times a week.
Okay. Yeah, I would say so too. Yeah. Yeah. If you're a business owner, you have a lot more freedom, and you could be doing this a lot more often. And it doesn't have to be like people are worried it's this really long hours long process every day. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. And I think you're a good example where you said, I'm really comfortable with this now, and I can crank something out in 15 minutes and just kind of get it out there and show how I'm thinking today, what my thought of the day is, whatever it might be, something that's humorous even. So I think if people could get over that hump, I tell people it's like set your timer for 20 minutes and just force yourself, because you kind of get stuff done in the time you give it, and then move on with your day. It's like 20 minutes to think a little bit about what you want to say and to write something and just get it out there. Don't overthink it. It's not going to work for you anyway. I guess. I've spent a day writing something and nothing happened with it. So it's like, hey, don't worry about it.
Yeah. And get in the habit too of thinking, throughout your day. Notice if you have certain insights, maybe you're at work and you have an insight about a project or a process, just like keep a running list of that, maybe get an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can use that to reference later for posts. So you could write them a lot quicker because you're not sitting there trying to brainstorm.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about neurodivergence. A lot of my listeners and my clients are neurodivergent. So a lot of folks have been diagnosed with ADHD. I had a lot of employees with ADHD in tech, and I think maybe we attract that because it's a creative mind, and it goes left and it goes right, and it has all kinds of cool ideas which don't lend themselves well to structured calendars and things like that. And you talk about neurodivergence. So I'd love to get kind of your thoughts on what are the challenges that people are facing who are neurodivergent in the workplace. Like, what have you seen when you talk with people about this?
I mean, the biggest challenge is getting employment, traditional employment.
Okay,
I think I saw like 85% of, I think it might be autistic adults are unemployed, but, hard to know where they get those. But it's a high percentage of unemployment among neurodivergent people in general, because we don't tend to fit into the traditional employment model. Just that's the biggest challenge. Communication in general is a big challenge in the workplace. A lot of communication tends to be very vague a lot of times, and neurodivergent people crave clarity and directness.
Yes. Please just tell me what you're thinking. Yeah, exactly.
What are you saying? So direct communication is important. So I'd say those are the biggest challenges.
Does it help? And I have a friend who's ADHD and dyslexic, and he talks about it all the time. It's his entire life he's struggled with it, and he used to try to hide it, and then he came out and with employers, and he goes, "Hey, I'm just going to tell you this is what I deal with, and this is what could help me. If we can figure out some accommodations, I need to record meetings. I'm not good during a meeting trying to take notes and keep up with it. I'm doing everything I can just to kind of focus on people's faces and hear what they're saying." And so recording meetings was one thing that he really likes to do. Have you found that it gets better if people talk with their manager about this and say, hey, this is who I am, this is how I interact and communicate best, and can we figure out a way to work through this? Or do people still want to be quiet about it, which I can understand too? It's like, it's a tough issue.
Yeah, it's so dependent on the person and the situation. I mean, and some people don't even know. Like, I just found out I was neurodivergent last year. So I didn't even have the knowledge to disclose that I was. So yeah, I think you have to just really feel it out and figure out what your environment is and how comfortable you are. I mean, I am a big advocate for, if you need any sort of accommodations, like, ask for them if you're comfortable doing that, just to make your life easier and to make it easier for your coworkers to like work with you and communicate. But yeah, it's so dependent on the situation.
Yeah, I agree. It is. You got to figure out how friendly the environment is and how welcoming. I think, and I've noticed a lot of my friends who are neurodivergent are all becoming solopreneurs. I get it. I totally get it. I've been one for over 14 years. I understand. And I think, much like yourself, I've recently kind of been learning about it and reading, and you recommended some books that I've been reading. And as I read it, I'm like, oh, so many things now make sense. And my wife's like, I know this about you. I've been trying to tell you this. And you're like, no, I'm not. And I think self-awareness is super powerful. And the people that you care about, like your partner and your children and so forth, then I think there's more understanding and tolerance. And I've even noticed that, it's like, okay, I understand why you're being this way and why you need so much clarity, or why you don't like having your routine disrupted. And it's like, this is when I do things and I need to get it done here and I don't want to move it. It's like, they're like, I thought you were just being stubborn and you're a pain in the butt. And it's like, oh, okay, now this I understand. It's like, it's hard for you not to be this way. You're not just willfully being a jerk about something. It's like, no, this is how my mind works. It's just is. So I think if nothing else, the self-awareness helps. And it helps you understand maybe what you need to do for yourself, different coping mechanisms and ways to kind of work through this for your career and strategize different approaches. I think it helps. Yeah.
And made me a lot more empathetic, I'd say. Just realizing, people behave in certain ways for reasons. So just being understanding of that and curious about it.
Yeah. I think that applies in general. I remember having this conversation because there's always politics in the workplace and it gets really ugly as you move higher, as I discovered. And I think somebody said, don't assume malicious intent always, right? And people do when they're like, you're being a jerk. He's behaving this way. And I think it was like, what is that person trying to achieve? What are their goals? Why would they do this? And then maybe even having a conversation about that. It's like, seems like you're pushing back. It seems like maybe you're being rewarded by your boss for a different type of outcome. Can we talk about that? And a lot of that honesty and authentic communication can help that way too, and like you said, being more empathetic and understanding, it really does help.
Definitely.
So where can people follow you and learn more about you? And I'll have links in the show notes for the folks listening if you want to jump straight to that, but it's always good to hear it verbally too.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Isabel Sterne. There's an E at the end of Sterne. And then on Substack, my Substack is called Cringe Letter. And I also have a website, isabelsterne.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Isabel. This has been rather enlightening. And I think everybody who's listening to this has a LinkedIn presence. And almost everybody who's listening to this needs to improve their LinkedIn presence. So this has been very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming an opportunity magnet for the best things in life.